Gentlemen, this is the Military Affairs Committee of the United States House of Representatives meeting for the purpose of considering national defense.
The Navy is asking for an increase of 25% in authorized naval tonnage in view of the grave international situation.
Congress, reflecting the voice of the people, appropriated the largest sum for military use ever voted during peace in American history. We didn't dream that a few years later it would look like peanuts. On March 14, 1939, Adolf Hitler broke the pledge he made at Munich. He took over all the rest of Czechoslovakia. There would be no more peace in our time. April 7, 1939, as we here in America observe Good Friday,
Mussolini invades Albania. Extra paper, Italy attacks Albania.
The picture was becoming clear. The conquering forces of violence were being set loose in the world. Where would they stop? In a last desperate effort to avert a world war, President Roosevelt, as a neutral, sent messages to Hitler and Mussolini, asking their promise to respect the independence of 30 free countries.
Vor allem diese Anfrage von Roosevelts.
To Adolf Hitler, this message was a huge joke as he repeated the names to a jeering Reichstag.
Schweden, Dänemark, Niederlande, Belgien, Großbritannien, Irland, Frankreich, Portugal, Spanien, die Schweiz, Liechtenstein, Luxemburg, Polen, Ungarn, Rumänien, Jugoslawien, Russland, Bulgarien, Türkei, Irak, Arabien, Syrien, Palästina, Ägypten.
This was the only answer the president received. On September the 1st, 1939, the Nazi army smashed into Poland. France had a treaty with Poland. Would they act now? At home, we listened in suspense.
Adolf Hitler's all-out attack on Poland makes the long-dreaded European war a certainty. Prime Minister Chamberlain of Great Britain gave the Nazi dictator a 0 hour for withdrawing his troops from Poland. That 0 hour ends now. At this time, we transfer you to London for an important announcement by the British Prime Minister.
Up to the very last, it would have been quite possible to have arranged a peaceful and honorable settlement between Germany and Poland. But Hitler would not have it. But a situation in which no word given by Germany's ruler could be trusted, and no people or country could feel itself safe, had become intolerable. Now, may God bless you all, and may He defend the right. For it is evil things that we shall be fighting against. And against them I am certain that the right will prevail.
6 hours after Great Britain declared war on Nazi Germany, the Republic of France followed. All France is in a maelstrom of activity. The Maginot Line has already opened fire on the Germans. The sparring is ended. World War II has begun.
At home, we were asked, what country do you consider responsible for causing this war? Germany, 82%. We Americans had no doubt who started it. Also, we began to fear that this war was going to concern us. President Roosevelt called a special session of Congress to reconsider the embargo against selling munitions.
I have asked the Congress to reassemble in extraordinary session in order that it may consider and act on changes in our neutrality law.
The men of Congress wrestled with their beliefs and our futures. They debated and they argued.
The arms embargo is far too great a security to American peace to permit its surrender without a last-ditch fight.
The Embargo Act, as it now stands, is one-sided and works entirely to the advantage of one side. Therefore, the Embargo Act should be modified.
We, the people, also debated and argued whether we should sell arms and munitions. When the question was put to us, we had an answer. Should we change the Neutrality Act so we can sell war supplies? Yes, 57%. Shortly after, our representatives changed the Neutrality Act. We lifted the embargo on arms and munitions. Now we would sell if purchasers would pay and take the stuff away in their own ships. American ships were still barred from combat zones. Meanwhile, on the other side of the globe, Japan was busy trying to bomb, shoot, and terrorize the Chinese into submission. We began to realize that if Japan conquered 400 million Chinese, she might become so strong as to run us right out of the Pacific. You will remember that 2 years earlier, in September 1937, when we were asked, in the present fight between Japan and China, are your sympathies with either side? Only 43% were with China. Most of us were undecided. In June 1939, when we were asked the same question, 74% said we were with China. Now our minds were made up. When we loaded our scrap iron on Japanese ships, our citizens protested. Let Mr. Atchison, Assistant Secretary of State, tell us the inside of the story.
So until the middle of 1940, the restriction of exports to Japan took the form of moral embargoes of aeroplanes and direct munitions. Then Congress passed the Export Control Act, and increasing cutoffs of scrap iron, aviation gasoline, and other strategic items followed. Exports were curtailed to the limit which those responsible for our defense were willing to risk. It was a fearful responsibility. On one side was the possibility, in fact the probability, that one day these materials might be used against us. On the other side was the possibility, in fact the probability, that to cut them off would provoke an attack which we were not then prepared to resist. Finally, in the summer of 1941, as it became clear that Japan was turning her back upon every possibility of reconciliation and adjustment, and was determined upon her great gamble of conquest, all exports ceased.
On April 9, 1940, the leaders of Nazi Germany shifted their war machine into high gear. They overran into Denmark. They smashed into Norway. On May the 10th, 1940, they blitzed into Holland and Belgium.
The Nazis are marching ahead at the fastest speed a conquering army has moved in all history. All roads in France are choked with slow-moving masses of refugees. Nazi stupid dive bombers are scraping and bombing thousands of helpless women and children.
Mr. Kaltenborn.
Good evening, everybody. Tonight, it seems clearly apparent that the first great phase of the war in the West has been won by Germany. The army of French and British has made a valiant battle in its effort to retreat to Dunkirk, where there is some slight chance that some part of it can be evacuated.
Adolf Hitler's mechanized forces are racing toward Paris as French resistance collapses.
On this 10th day of June, 1940, the hand that held the dagger has struck it into the back of its neighbor.
This is William L. Shirer speaking from the forest of Compiègne, where Adolf Hitler today is handing his armistice terms to France. It is 3:15 p.m. Adolf Hitler strides slowly toward the little clearing. I can see his face. It is grave, solemn, yet brimming with revenge. Off to one side is a large statue of Marshal Foch. Hitler does not appear to see it. Now we see the French walking down the avenue. led by General Hunsinger. Hitler and the other German leaders rise as the French enter. General Keitel reads the preamble to the German armistice terms. This whole ceremony is over in a quarter of an hour.
The last time I saw Paris, her heart was warm and gay. I heard the laughter of her heart in every street cafe. The last time I saw Paris, the trees were dressed for spring, and lovers walked beneath those trees, and birds found songs to sing. I dodged the same old taxi cab that I had dodged for years. The chorus of their squeaky horns was music to my ears. The last time I saw Paris, her heart was warm and gay. No matter how they changed, I remember
Conquering armies now stood on the shores of the Atlantic. The danger was suddenly close. Countries conquered by the Nazis had possessions outside of Europe. Some of these possessions are in America. Would the Nazis demand the French naval units at Martinique? Would the Nazis move into the Dutch oil fields at Curacao? Would the Nazis seize the French naval base at Dakar for invasion of South America? Already in Brazil, there were over 1 million Germans who lived exactly as they did in Germany. 1,200 German schools with Nazi textbooks and Nazi teachers. Nazi newspapers. Hermann Goering glider clubs had been established. Also in Brazil, there were 260,000 Japanese taking orders from Japan. In Ecuador, within easy bombing range of the Panama Canal, German airlines had been established. German pilots were reserve officers of the Luftwaffe. The German transport planes had bomb racks already built in. In Argentina, German athletic clubs similar to the Hitler Youth Movement had been organized exclusively for Germans. Here was a fifth column ready to take over. In Havana, we met with 20 other American republics.
There must not be a shadow of a doubt anywhere as to the determination of the American nations not to permit the invasion of their hemisphere by the armed forces of any power or any possible combination of powers.
20 American nations stood firm. The Americas would not allow any European colony in this hemisphere to be transferred to a non-American power. We said, keep out. We meant it.
We must increase production facilities for everything needed for the Army and Navy for national defense. I believe that this nation should plan at this time a program that will provide us with 50,000 military and naval planes.
To protect our shores, we authorized construction of a two-ocean navy, the greatest the world has ever known. At least it would be the greatest navy when completed in 1944. But then, in 1940, it was only a paper navy. Our fighting forces at that time consisted of an army of 187,000 men, a navy of 120,000, and this dot was the Air Corps, 22,387 strong. All told, 330,000 men. We had makeshift supplies, makeshift equipment, stovepipes for cannon, bags of flour for bombs, and trucks were labeled tanks. Our infantry had exactly 488 machine guns. We possessed 235 pieces of field artillery, 10 light and 18 medium tanks. That was the Army of the United States in May 1940, the month in which the Nazis overran France. So we called our Minutemen, the National Guards of the 48 states.